The Minnesota Vikings win 36-28 over the Pittsburgh Steelers on primetime Thursday Night Football. Primetime Kirk Cousins, we saw once again. Vikings defense, we saw fall apart. We're going to talk about this going forward. Vikings progress to 6-7 on the season, not where we want to be. Stay at second in the division, move to 8th in the NFC. That's 8th in the NFC, and the Vikings will not be moving into the playoff picture this week, no matter what happens on Sunday and on Monday Night Football. Vikings won't be moving into the playoff picture. However, 8th in the NFC, top of the NFC hunt right now, and we're better than all other teams in the NFC hunt. So Vikings should be sneaking their way into the playoffs as a 6 or a 7 seed. But like I said previously on the show, it doesn't matter. I mean, really, the Vikings can move into the playoffs and get humiliated on primetime is what's going to happen. That's what nearly happened against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Vikings in the first half, I'm sure you all already saw, in the first half, the Vikings had the best performance I have seen, the best first half performance I have seen by the Vikings in years. Vikings allowed just 66 yards to the Pittsburgh Steelers, allowed 0 points to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 300 of yards of offense the Vikings had, and 23 points the Vikings scored in the first half. Vikings had a 23-0 lead over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not only did the Vikings have a 23-0 lead over the Pittsburgh Steelers, but absolutely dominated the first half, both offensively and defensively. Now, 23-0 lead in the half feels pretty good, right? Feels good, but you're not comfortable with that as a Vikings fan because it doesn't matter who you're facing, whether that's the Detroit Lions, whether that's the Arizona Cardinals, whether that's the Pittsburgh Steelers with it ends up being a 29-0 lead. It's coming down to the final play. Why? Because this is the Minnesota Vikings, where they always want to blow your lead to go down to the final play, or even have a comeback and come down to the final play. Doesn't matter who we're facing, it is going to happen. 29-0 lead going into the third quarter. Vikings also did score 2 field goals. Bashaud Breeland got an interception in the third quarter, and the Vikings scored off of that. Just surprising performance from Bashaud Breeland. I mean, he played terrible. He played an awful game. Surprised that he was able to get an interception, just his second interception of the season, even though he's, I believe, the third most targeted corner in football, just only 2 interceptions. Come on, Bashaud Breeland, just having a terrible year. And after the season, Vikings should not bring Bashaud Breeland back, as he's been the most disappointed Viking on this team and makes every opposing receiver look like Jerry Rice. And then into the third quarter, Vikings have a 29-0 lead. You think that the Vikings are finally going to get a comfortable win, maybe a win that's not within 8 points. You think it might happen. No, it's not going to happen because this is the Minnesota Vikings. Pittsburgh Steelers 65-yard touchdown drive. Right after that, the play right after the 65-yard touchdown drive, Kirk Cousins throws an interception into the hands of Devin Bush. Now, it's really hard to see who's to blame for this. Was it Kirk Cousins or was it Justin Jefferson? It's not Kirk Cousins' fault. This was not Kirk Cousins' fault on this interception because he hit, it was also a tipped pass. So would it be Kirk Cousins' fault? But again, that was a catchable ball by Justin Jefferson is what I'm saying here. I understand it was tipped, but it was a catchable ball from Justin Jefferson, and it went through the hands of Jefferson and into the hands of Devin Bush. And right after that, Steelers scoring a 30-yard touchdown drive, two touchdowns right back to back, and then the Vikings have a 3-and-out, give it back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who go for a huge touchdown drive. I can't remember how many yards it is, but they score another touchdown. I mean, Vikings are just falling apart, allowing 3 touchdowns within 2 minutes. And now putting the Pittsburgh Steelers back into the game at 29-20. Vikings 29-20 going into the fourth quarter. And this was just a terrible performance by the Vikings into the second half. I mean, Kirk Cousins had 3 completions in the second half. 3 completions and 2 interceptions in the second half. Primetime Kirk showed up. And when I mean that, I mean, he proved the haters right, is what he did here in the second half. Is that Kirk can't perform. Kirk can win on a primetime game. We've seen this happen, but Kirk didn't look good on a primetime game. And it just didn't happen here. Kirk fell flat in the second half, threw 2 interceptions. One of them was, of course, his fault. The other one was really up in the air of whose fault caused that interception. But again, the Vikings defense in the second half played terrible as well. And as a whole, just were blowing the lead. Just time and time again, coming off of a loss against the Detroit Lions, Vikings came into this game hot. They came into this game ready to play and just fell flat in the second half. But a win's a win, right? I mean, a win is a win. It comes against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You barely win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if that feels very good. It does not feel very good. Even though it is an 8-point win, Vikings blew a 29-0 lead, nearly blew a 29-0 lead. and made the play come down to the final play of the game. Minnesota Vikings just came with a terrible performance into the second half. And this is the Vikings team that we expected to see. Even though the Vikings had a 29-0 lead, we expected that something was going to happen. Something was going to happen with this Vikings team. We expected this to happen. Vikings to make it come down to the final play, which, by the way, credit to Harrison Smith, because just like the 2020 season, Harrison Smith is that pleasant surprise on this Vikings defense. Our Vikings defense might suck. Our Vikings defense might be bottom 10 in the league. But we have Harrison Smith. We have Eric Hendricks, who returned to this game and looked great. We have Anthony Barr, who returned to this game and looked great. Cam Bynum also came up. Xavier Woods showed out. Armon Watts stepping into that role, just looking amazing. Michael Pierce had a great day. I mean, this Vikings defense, outside of the corners, had a good day. The Vikings defense, all in all, you look at the game as a whole, outside of these cornerbacks, the Vikings defense had a great day. And then you look at the Vikings corners and Chris Boyd. Come on, Chris Boyd. You make one good play and you sell and you taunt the Chris Boyd. You shouldn't even be on this roster right now after that. You shouldn't have been put back into the game after a taunting penalty when you make one good play. I get it. You're excited because it's like your first big play in the NFL, but you don't got to taunt. That's just ridiculous, Chris Boyd. I mean, Vikings defense might have had 5 sacks and an interception, but do you feel good about this Vikings defense going forward? Do you feel like this Vikings defense can go up against some of these opposing offenses that we're going to have to play? We're going to have to play the Packers again. We're going to have to play the Rams offense. And if we make the playoffs, do you feel comfortable with this Vikings defense to be holding teams time and time again under 26 points? I don't. Because this is a Vikings defense that has been terrible against the run and against the pass. Despite the fact that we have some of the top paid defensive players in the NFL and some of the most talented all-pros in the NFL, we continue to fall short. Harrison Smith looked great. Harrison Smith had a sack in this game when they blitzed him on Ben Roethlisberger. He obviously had the game-changing play. Thank you for knocking the ball out of Pat Freiermuth's hands to give the Vikings this victory. Great play by this Vikings, by some of these Vikings players. Harrison Smith, obviously. Xavier Woods was also showing up in this game. Eric Hendricks had 11 total tackles in this game. Eric Hendricks, he just kind of shows you how much we need him on this Vikings defense. Eric Hendricks, just the core player in this Vikings defense, also had a sack, has a career high 5 sacks so far this season, most by his entire NFL career. Thank you, Eric Hendricks, for being the brightest spot on this Vikings defense. Despite the fact that we are terrible of a defense, you continue to show up and show out. Anthony Barr did actually have 9 total tackles in this game and was all over the field. Got to credit Anthony Barr here. They also blitzed him on a couple of plays. He didn't get a sack, but they still did blitz Anthony Barr, which you love to see. Sheldon Richardson had 3 solo tackles and a sack. Sheldon Richardson, loving to see him as a defensive end alongside DJ Wanham. Michael Pierce, obviously, we love Michael Pierce. 3 total tackles and a sack. Armon Watts, 3 total tackles and a sack. I mean, this Vikings defense, like, you look at it statistically, we did great. 5 sacks and an interception. But it really comes down to those corners, because you're going up against these passing offenses in the future. I mean, you let Ben Roethlisberger throw all over you. Chris Boyd gives up a terrible, not only did he have the taunting penalty, that wasn't even his worst penalty. It was the pass interference play on 3rd down. I mean, that just threw the Vikings game. That was giving it back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He wasn't the only one who had that big play. I believe it was it Bashaud Breeland who had another huge pass interference. Bashaud Breeland also got destroyed on a route by, I believe it was Chase Claypool, scored a touchdown on him. I mean, come on, or as Deontay Johnson, I think it was. But as a whole, this Vikings defense, it just comes to show how important the cornerback position is, because we might have Harrison Smith, we might have Xavier Woods, who've been one of the best safety duos in the NFL. Eric Hendricks and Anthony Barr, obviously great linebackers. You have Nick Vigil on top of that. I mean, he's a little iffy, and then you have a defensive line who's been surprisingly good, considering there are a lot of late round draft picks. I mean, Armon Watts was able to step in. But then you look at the cornerback room, and Vikings are one of the worst cornerback rooms in football, and that is why we are losing games right now. Because you're just allowing explosive play after explosive play every game. And that's the reason why the Vikings are losing games. And that's the reason we should have lost against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Coming in with a performance like that in the second half, I would have been fine with the Vikings losing. You know why? Because right now, Mike Zimmer might not even be our head coach if the Vikings lost. Right now, Clint Kubiak probably wouldn't even be our offensive play caller. Vikings would have been very low chances of making the playoffs. Now the Vikings are looking for a late season playoff push with a near even record. Vikings are looking for a playoff push going forward after the Bears game. Vikings could be a 500 team and looking into the playoffs. Vikings, though, as a whole, it doesn't matter what happens. I just want Mike Zimmer fired. I want Clint Kubiak gone. I want just a new regime. I want us to change what we should have fixed years ago. This is not the first time the Vikings won a game on this podcast, and I don't feel very good about this Vikings team. This is not the first time on this podcast that Vikings are coming off with I'll nearly blow a lead and end up winning the game, and you don't feel good. You don't feel good. Because I don't want a mediocre team. I want a Super Bowl contending team. And we can't do that with Mike Zimmer as our head coach. We can't do that with Clint Kubiak calling the plays. Now, he might have had a great day against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I really love to see him how we utilize these other players in the offense. Finally, Chris Herndon gets a reception. I mean, Dalvin Cook obviously just lighting up the field. Ezra Cleveland is also one of the best left guards in football right now. Him and Riley Reif, or sorry, not Riley Reif, him and Brian O'Neill on our offensive line are the most underrated offensive linemen in football. I mean, there's a lot of underrated offensive linemen because they're not the ball carriers, but again, they're leading to some massive Dalvin Cook runs and are continuing to buy Kirk Cousins enough time to make a play, to make the ball down the field with Justin Jefferson. Ezra Cleveland and Brian O'Neill have done a great job. As a whole, Vikings did win the game. A win is a win. It just doesn't feel good. But on top of that, Kirk Cousins fell flat. But Justin Jefferson, now, Jefferson may have been quiet in this game, but he had a career-high 15 targets. Thank you, Kubiak. I can't believe I'm saying this, but thank you, Clint Kubiak, for involving Justin Jefferson, for making him the focal point of this offense. Now, the focal point of this offense was probably Dalvin Cook, but the focal point of this passing offense was Justin Jefferson, who had a career-high 15 targets with Adam Thielen gone. That is incredible. Now, he may have had 15 targets, but he had a career-low catch percentage. Did not have a good day. There was 3 catchable passes that he did not bring in. One of them in the end zone. One of them led to an interception, and one of them in the fourth quarter. So 3 crucial plays, which he could have made and wasn't able to bring it in. He had 7 catches on 15 targets for only 79 yards and a touchdown. So not a great day from Justin Jefferson, but thank you, Clint Kubiak, for giving him the ball. Thank you, Clint Kubiak, for targeting him 15 times in this game, because that is what the Vikings have to do more of. Revolve around the pass game in Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne, who KJ Osborne, did he have more receiving yards than Justin Jefferson? May have had more receiving yards than Justin Jefferson in this game. KJ Osborne, a great wide receiver. Justin Jefferson, an even better top 3 wide receiver, both coming out of the 2020 draft. Going forward after the season will be due, after the 2022 season, will be due for a contract extension. And maybe going forward, when we move on from Adam Thielen, we will see Justin Jefferson as KJ Osborne as our wide receiver 1 and 2 wide receiver duo. And Vikings will continue to have one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. Justin Jefferson might have not even had a top 10 games of this season so far, but still, I mean, 79 yards and a touchdown, like, we'll accept it. And Justin Jefferson's still one of the best receivers in football. But you know who did have a good day? Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, Vikings player of the game, undoubtedly. Dalvin Cook's 27 carries for 205 rushing yards, 7.6 yards per carry, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Dalvin Cook went absolutely off against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And we didn't even expect Dalvin Cook to play in this game, let alone have this good of a game, get this much play time. We expected Dalvin Cook to sit out this week and have Alexander Mattison out there. And I'm going to say it right now. Alexander Mattison would have been nearly as high as Dalvin Cook was right here. We had 205 rushing yards. He would have almost have had that. Why? Because Dalvin Cook went untouched in a lot of his massive runs. Had a 29-yard rushing touchdown where he went untouched. Vikings offensive line did a great job getting Dalvin Cook one-on-one with the safety all game long. It was Dalvin Cook versus Minkah Fitzpatrick all game long, and that's what you love to see this Vikings offensive line do. I understand we have an offensive line with Oli Udoh starting at left tackle now, and who hasn't done a great job, but it's good to know we have Ezra Cleveland and Brian O'Neill on this offensive line who have done a great job. But as a whole, Dalvin Cook just have a day. 7.6 yards per carry. I mean, that's unstoppable. And I understand TJ Watt went down in the first half and was ruled out at halftime. And Highsmith was also out and just went absolutely off. I mean, 27 carries is pretty typical for Dalvin Cook, Minnesota Vikings offense. But 205 rushing yards? That's the most of his season so far. Most he's had since the Detroit Lions game in 2020. 7.6 yards per carry. That's another season high. 7.6 yards per carry. That shouldn't even be legal at this point. And 2 rushing touchdowns. This is his first multi-rushing touchdown game of the season. Just have a day. Dalvin Cook really just lit up this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, finding a hole in the open field, getting one-on-one with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Offensive line, you got to credit them, especially Ezra Cleveland, who has developed into one of the best left guards in football right now, Ezra Cleveland has, and it's good to see him. I like the decision to play him at left guard. I really am a fan of that decision because you gave him snaps at right guard in the 2020 season, and after moving on from Riley Reif, you expected Ezra Cleveland to be the starting left tackle going into the season. Now, it sucks to see what happened with Christian Darrisaw, his injury, and continue to see Rashad Hill and Oli Udoh out there, who is just looking terrible at left tackle. But again, it's nice to see him at left guard, and you have to appreciate the bright spots you have on this offensive line, and that is Ezra Cleveland and that is Brian O'Neill, who have done a great job on this offensive line. As a whole, the rest of them, we're not going to credit anybody else in this offensive line. Christian Darrisaw obviously injured, but again, Minnesota Vikings, Dalvin Cook just lit up this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and it doesn't matter who was starting in the backfield, would have had a good day. On top of that big day that we just talked about, he had a 17-yard reception in the fourth quarter, which was a game-changing move he lined up in the backfield and ran an option route and picked up 17 yards from it. So that was a big play by this Vikings team. Love to see it. Thank you, Clint Kubiak, for actually calling a half decent game. I am proud. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with you, Clint Kubiak. Still hate you. Sorry. I just can't stand this guy, Clint Kubiak. But again, he called a good day, and I'll credit him where credit is due. Clint Kubiak had a good day. But fire Clint Kubiak. I am tired of this guy running our offense, as he's done a terrible job so far this season. It is, alongside Mike Zimmer, the biggest reason why the Vikings have a losing record, where we have a top 10 roster in the NFL. Just comes to show how important coaching staff is. But next week, the Minnesota Vikings will travel to Chicago on a very long 11 days until our next game. Hopefully within those 11 days, we can see a head coaching change. Next week, the Minnesota Vikings will travel to Chicago to take on the Bears, currently 4-8 Bears, but will likely be 4-9 after they lose to the Packers this weekend. Vikings will play them on Monday, December 20th, 7:15 Central Time, and this will be on ESPN and ABC, as it is a Monday Night Football game. I'm really curious, actually, for you guys. So Chicago Bears are going to play the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Obviously, we're cheering for the Bears. We don't want the Packers to get the 1 seed. But after that, are you going to be watching this game? Because it's on ESPN. Are you going to watch it with the regular broadcast, or are you going to watch the Manning cast? Because me, typically, this is I have a question for you guys, because Vikings fans, I always watch the Manning cast. I think it's just so much more entertaining as Peyton Manning and Eli Manning break down the game. But if my Vikings team is playing, it's a little too serious for how the Manning cast takes it. It's a little more, it's less about the conversation. I don't want to hear these conversations going on. And it's more about, I want to see my team, what they're capable of going up against the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field, what our defense and offense is able to do. So I think I'm going to watch the regular broadcast, but I typically watch the Manning cast. So I'm really curious for what you guys are going to do on this matchup. But again, 11 days until our next game. We have a long time. That's enough time to make a head coaching change and enough time to figure out what is wrong with this team. And I will give you a hint, Ziggy. What is wrong with this team is your entire front office. That is what's wrong with your team right now. And that's what you have to fix first if you want to rebuild this team around the pass game. Minnesota Vikings 36-28 in a very uncomfortable win against the Pittsburgh Steelers managed to cut their lead from 29 down to 8 at the end of the game by Harrison Smith pass deflection. Great day by Harrison Smith, longest tenured Viking. Harrison Smith just been, oh my gosh, how are you this good? It's 2012 when his rookie season was, and I fully remember Harrison Smith rookie season in 2012 because that was one of the most memorable seasons by the Minnesota Vikings in my time. One of the most memorable seasons where Adrian Peterson's just lighting up the field, Harrison Smith making an immediate impact in the NFL, and just never hit a decline. It's been how many years? 10 years now, and Harrison Smith still into his 30s is looking just as good as he was in his rookie season. I mean, Harrison Smith just lighting up the field. Thank you for being a bright spot on this Vikings defense and taking charge on this Vikings defense. You should be a Pro Bowler. I know Harrison Smith is not going to make a Pro Bowl in 2021 because he's very underrated, but should be a Pro Bowler and second team All-Pro. As a whole, Vikings 36-28 over the Steelers. Let me know what y'all think.